I'm Will Nix. I'm co-executive director of the SIE Society, the Social Impact Entertainment Society. And with us today, we have three experts in the area of measuring, assessing impact, which is one of the great aspects of how do we really determine whether we're landing. There have been some great examples of that upstairs in the auditorium. We have Minecraft and Xbox and UNESCO and others who are looking at that. And we're going to look at it through a slightly different lens today. But we're going to start just with each of our speakers introducing themselves. We're just going to do a snippet their full biographies in the speaker section. And we will sort of pull this back, and once we get the slides loaded and whatever, we'll get going so we don't hold you.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining us today. I'm Julie Davitz. I'm CEO and founder of a company called Plus Media Solutions. We are a bridge between inspiration and action, and then we measure the actual behavior of the user, more than likes and shares and impressions. We're able to tell you, did she sign a petition? Did she download that toolkit? Did she register to vote? Et cetera, et cetera. And I come to all of this after decades of work in the impact space. So look forward to speaking with you more in a moment.
Hello, I'm Levi Braslow. I do a lot of different things, but I'm here representing myself as an advisor. I work with a lot of organizations around impact design, impact strategy, data, technology, product, and research. So that spectrum of how we map what we want to do and our ideas about impact through designing, measuring, evaluating, and then data storytelling. So I'll speak about that a bit more when it comes back around to me.
Thank you. Evan Hirsch. I'm a co-founder of Play Nice Games. Unfortunately, the scientist who you want to talk to is not here, so I'm your stand-in. But I'll be talking a lot about how we integrate design and science, and we've got many now years of data that has been proven out, and we're about to launch a game for anxiety, kids with anxiety, and that's got now 6 years of clinical data behind it. So we'll talk about that.
So I'm going to defer what was going to be my intro here, and I'm going to throw it right to Julie to talk a little bit about hers, and she'll have some slides hopefully shortly for you as well.
Great, thanks, Will. And I'm actually a proud member of SIE, the Social Impact Entertainment Society, which I would urge all of you to take a look at. I come to this today, sorry, with notes because I've been traveling for the last couple of weeks. I wish I could say I had everything memorized. But I am not dispassionate about this subject. I actually left my corporate job because I was so frustrated with all of the awareness-raising content that we have out there, games included. What was most important to me was how are we bringing all these amazing stories into real life? And how are we measuring this far beyond likes, shares, impressions, and awards? Because how do we know what's working? So we often hear that stories change the world. Well, if they do, we'd be living in a different world, in my opinion. So how can we get those stories to change the world? And I look at games as a story. You're in a closed environment, you've got a predisposed audience, you're sharing information, they're inspirational, they're educational. We know that games can create positive change. And I should preface all of this by saying I'm speaking in a super high level. I don't know what all of your interests are, whether you're students or designers or just here to learn a little bit more. So take this from a very high level. But what I'm looking to do is how to explore that for games that can really create, assess, and measure within the game and in the real world. So there's a lot happening in game. Sadly, right now, it's focused on selling stuff. And do we really need more stuff? You guys have probably heard about the Stagwell and the new in-game advertising platform called Anzu. I mean, this is huge. It's huge for the industry. But again, what if we took that approach and we moved it into positive social change instead of selling stuff? So if you're designing a game for change, make it a lever for change. And there are three things that are important to look at. The first is engagement, the second is action, the third is community. The engagement, sorry, but it's up to you. You need to create a really compelling game and get people to use it. From there, we can help you with the action piece. And there are a lot of great folks, not just Plus Media, there are a lot of great folks that can help you with that engagement piece. There are wonderful theories, wonderful frameworks, lots of research to work on, and then we hope that through that action piece, you translate it into something substantial and measure that. So that takes a fair amount of work. The third part is community building. And community building should come if that engagement and action is addressed. So how do you begin this entire journey? If we had the slide, it would be showing you measure what matters. So what I mean by measure what matters, measure what matters to you. Are you just doing a game because it's very cool to do a game and you want to make some money? Or are you doing a game because you want to make change? So obviously step one. So start with your basic observation, create your hypothesis for impact, design your strategy. You've got story, action, engagement around your thematic values, and then you also need to have an impact time frame. As you're creating this narrative, it's really important to also look at the counter narrative, because if you can dismantle the counter narrative, you're going to get much more engagement and action and community building. Connect your story to solutions that exist. Believe it or not, there are millions of solutions. Again, that's a place where Plus Media comes in to help folks with that. Alignment. You've got to align your themes and your goals with actionable solutions. And again, in the interest of time, I'm just looking at low-hanging fruit here because we could talk about this for hours. What I want to make sure you take home, though, is it's important to measure the drops. You don't have to measure the ocean. It will all add up. So let's keep that in mind. Lastly, I want to just talk about community, because if you can get to that community level, that's really where you're scaling change. So I'm going to give you two very different examples. Let's say you've got a game for change that's talking about gun violence, and you want to move from, I'll give you my gun when you pry it from my cold dead hands, to gun violence is an epidemic and we can prevent thousands of needless deaths each year if we take action. The impact result is the power of the NRA being blunted by everyday moms speaking out about the importance of keeping their children safe. Another example, improving women's financial health. You want to move from, I don't even know my FICO score, to, I want to better understand my finances and plan my future. The impact results, women sign up for free financial wellness courses. So all of this to say, it takes a fair amount of thinking. So start with your premise, assess, theorize, then prove your impact by measuring what's happening. Once you've got your inspiration, your game, your gamer, your assessments, you've got a whole lot of data. And that's where I'm going to pass it over to Levi, because a whole lot of data is a great thing, but we also need to put it into context with stories. So looking forward to your questions later.
Can I have my slides, please?
Stick on different slides. You here we go. Yeah.
I know, I do too.
So when actually the slides were updated, I think you have the clicker.
One. Yeah, but
Can I see the clicker? Well,
sure. I think that's that.
maybe it's at the end of yours.
But
Well, Right.
How am I doing?
Okay, well, I'm just going to talk. Contrary to the previous slide, I'm not. Oh, thank you. Great. Oh, you know. Okay, cool. Thanks. Awesome. Great. So, hello. As I mentioned before, Levi, I am not here representing any organization. I am a advisor working in social impact strategy, data, technology, and research, so that whole continuum. And I'm going to speak, sort of jumping off from what Julie said, about some of the principles of impact design, storytelling, and we'll get into data and measurement briefly. Similar to Julie, I don't know all of you. I assume there's a big range of what you're doing and your context, and we're going to start by talking about that as an input to designing your impact strategy. So the first thing is, like, who are you? Who's your org? What do you want to do? What's your context? If you have a product, if you have a game already, that's going to inform what your audience is, what you can do with your game, and how you can create impact. If you're net new, you're making something brand new and you want to have impact, you can decide how to enter into an audience or a market to set the context that will enable you to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. So context and goals together define what's your impact opportunity. How can you enter into the gaming space or whatever other space to create positive social change and impact? So, whoever you are, wherever you're coming from, you want to think about, what can I bring to the table? Because I assume you're all here because you want to create positive social change. Cool. Okay.
Stellar.
Yeah, great. Okay, so context, I just mentioned that. So, do you have a product? Do you have technology? What are its capabilities? What is it doing now? And how can you find entry points for impact within the products that you have or that you want to build? Who are your audiences? How would you want to move them? Similar to kind of what Julie was saying, we're taking people on a journey. They're engaging, and we want them to take action, whether that's changing their mind, changing their beliefs, or changing the actions that they're going to take. That's all part of their journey and the continuum of what I call ladder of engagement, which I'll talk about in a second. Or I'm sure you've all heard that term before. It's not like net new, but you want to think about, who are the people that are engaging with you now? Who are the people you think will engage with you if you're building something new? And how do you want to change their minds or move them toward your impact goal? And then finally, what's your overarching strategy? Are you trying to build a game and sell it? Is it a commercial enterprise? Are you trying to run ads? But you also care about social impact. How can you make the puzzle fit together to achieve an impact goal while also being successful in other ways that are important to your organization? So we can talk a lot more about that. There's a lot of frameworks for how organizations think about this when they're designing their impact strategy, but it's not you can't have impact if you don't have a functioning product and an audience and people using it. And so if you want to have impact, you also have to have a strategy for deploying and getting people to use your things. Right? So that's an important consideration that's part of your context. Impact design, you probably, if you've thought about or been interested in this topic for a while, you've heard some of these terms. When you're designing for impact, you want to be really clear about, what are your goals? What's your North Star? What's the big thing you're trying to achieve? And then how can you kind of design something that ladders up to that? So your theory of change is articulating how your thing is going to actually drive the result that you want. Logic models are a way of mapping particular pathways within a theory of change. Measurement is aligned to what your theory of change and your logic models are, to say, here are the places where I can measure, and here's why I believe that measuring this thing, maybe it's a lower level output or a survey-based thing, something that's maybe not as advanced as what Evan's going to talk about.
I think it's the opposite.
Yeah, well, so your measurement needs to kind of look at what you can do based on your context and your product and your audiences, and align that with what's your theory of change. So where can you measure along the path of your theory of change and be pretty confident that that's going to be indicative of that bigger impact. And then finally, data collection, which again goes back to product. Where can you get data? Do you think you have to go survey people? What are the selection bias and other issues that are maybe going to undermine that? Are there sort of administrative or data exhaust that you already have in your product that you can use to track and measure? That's a really great opportunity to do a lot efficiently rather than designing a whole standalone research study. So these considerations around impact design there's not one right way. It is dependent on your context and understanding kind of what you can do now and how you can build to do more in the future. And then finally, impact storytelling. Why are we doing all of this? So use cases. What is the purpose of impact measurement for us as an organization or as an individual? You want to have impact? You want to know for yourself that you're having impact? That's awesome. That is a use case in itself. But if you have investors or people who are using your product and you want to be able to talk to them about your impact and what this product is doing for them, there's a lot of different stories that you might tell that use some of the same data or maybe some different types of data, but that help you to demonstrate to people the results of this impact design and your goals being achieved or hopefully making progress toward those goals. That can include quantitative and qualitative components in your story. That can include a discussion of moving people up a ladder. We're engaging people, right? We keep talking about games are an amazing engagement opportunity. People really dig in and are focused and present. How do we move them up this ladder and help them kind of get toward the impact goals that we have set? And then finally, thinking about, I know you've probably all heard this, but what's the larger impact territory? So maybe you have a big reach, but you're not moving people that much. That can be good if you're moving them a little, but it's a lot of people. That can be good. Maybe you're touching just a few people, but you're changing their lives a ton. You're really changing their behavior. You're really changing their attitudes. That can be cool too. Or maybe it's not that many people, not that deep, but it persists. That's huge. So it really matters if you see a result years later or even 6 months later versus something that you can only observe in the moment or that you don't see continued change or internalizing of that change over time. So thinking about these as part of your story, maybe right now we've got reach, that's what we've got, but we want to build a way to talk about those deeper impacts that we're having. So that's part of your sort of maturity journey and the types of stories you can tell. Okay, last slide is brief, I promise. Impact measurement and data strategy. So data strategy is how you're going to know things about the impact that you're having and measure things. I mentioned before user experience and user journey, thinking about how you can actually measure things that people are doing, whether that's on your product. If you have a tabletop game, maybe there's a QR code on it. If you have obviously a computer game or an online game, you have other measurement opportunities. You need to think about what people are doing, what's their journey on your product or with your game to know where you will be able to measure things, right? Data collection then is the way that we go about doing that, whether that's something that we already are collecting, maybe through actions taken on a digital platform, or that's something we're going to set up a new data collection process, whether that's a survey or using other kinds of tracking tools like people clicking through a QR or whatever. We need to know how we're going to collect data. And there's a lot of data you might want that you won't be able to collect right now. And that's totally normal. You're, again, looking at your context and your opportunity space to figure out what you can do and how you can build to do more. Finally, analysis and reporting. There's no point collecting data if you don't have a use for it, and if that use is not meaningful, right? You could say I have all this data and I'm doing all this analysis, but there's no story, right? So the analysis and reporting part is how you get that story out of your data and into people's hands and into their minds to hopefully, drive more change going forward. So that's my summary of what I kind of do and think about. Looking forward to the question and answer where we can talk more about some of these topics.
Thank you.
You don't need
this
that.
one.
Yep.
Let's see if we go there. Oh, perfect. So Mind Light, I don't know if anybody was here 7 years ago. We showed Mind Light here a long time ago, and we were a finalist in the Game for Change Awards that year. We tried raising money for a couple years, and I gave up because everyone was pushing. So Mind Light is a game that's now clinically proven then and now to help kids with reduce anxiety through biofeedback. And I'll get into the data in a second, but the biggest part of the story was for years we were being pushed towards a model of game publishing like Achille or Pear, if anybody knows what happened to those companies, but it didn't end well. And we were very against it. So we put the game on the shelf, and my partner and I, we walked away. And we came back about a year and a half ago and we got funding from a large grant, and we're about to commercialize the game. But the core thing about Mind Light was when Isabel started doing the game design, and the joke is I spent many years in Electronic Arts and Xbox and THQ, and I've worked at Ubisoft and Activision. I've worked at every major game company on the studio side. And the joke about Mind Light is I had nothing to do with making the game. The scientist did it, and I looked at him like, you made that? That's kind of cool. And so I come from the really commercial end of the world, and where Isabel and I met was that we wanted to make a game that was seriously good. We didn't want to make a seriously good game that wasn't fun. Okay, because there's too many of those out there. Yeah? You want to just advance me? Oh, there it is. So this is my general religion in life. I work mostly in clinical now and healthcare and behavioral health work for the last 11 years. And this is my hardcore religion. If it's not engaging and it's not fun, or they don't trust you, nothing's coming of it. Just stop yourself now. And I will say this with an arrogant belief towards the serious game makers in the room. You can do serious topics, but stop beating people over the head. They don't want to do it. You get nowhere. You can get them there. So to your point about guns, start them in a fun place, get them hooked, and then slowly modulate. But if you don't engage with them, you can't make any change in the world. So this is how we work our game. We use biofeedback and just standard game controllers, standard game engines. We're using Unity. But we use biofeedback, which is a cursing and a blessing for us, because it's a third piece of hardware to buy, and the connections and all that is a righteous pain in the ass. But I was using the technical term for any of the engineers in the room. But when it works, it's magic. And we learned when I was on so my team, I was the creative director on the first Microsoft Surface. And we learned on Surface with thousands of hours of user research is anytime you could bridge digital and physical worlds, people are ecstatic. The problem is trying to do it at a price point is not easy. But what's interesting about what we do is we take two methods. So does anyone know what the right method is for user testing? Okay, go learn it. It came out of Microsoft Xbox by Dennis Wicks and Bill Full and the guys. And it was the game that it was how they figured out how to make shooting a gun this way work this way. But it's called Rapid Iterative Test Environment. And it's typically done 8 people, 1 hour session every week. And you'll do a quick test, get changes, and go to the next one. Test, get changes, go. So you quickly learn what's working. When Isabel and I met, Isabel is a developmental psychology researcher. And her whole team is top science quality. And so she was doing pretty good clinical testing, or let's call it psychology testing. And I looked at it and said, that wasn't telling me if it was fun, if the things work. So what we've learned to do together is we take the right method, and we'll do users come through. And by the way, our game is with 8 to 12-year-olds. So if you're not aware of COPA, you better learn, because it's very expensive to screw up on. And we're collecting data. And collecting data on COPA is not fun. Okay, and we've finally reached an agreement with Apple on how we can collect data in a way that is comply with the FTC and higher than their standards for privacy. And it's not trivial, it's important work, but we want to make sure parents are informed that we're collecting the data. We don't ever sell it, but we need the data. So what we did is we take our studies, and we do this, it starts with paper prototypes all the way through to final tuning. And each session, half an hour of it, is the game fun? Is it engaging? Is this just like we do commercial game testing? And the second half hour is, did you learn what we wanted you to learn? Did the psychological mechanism work? So we do this in these small little bites at a time. So with these 8, so when you make a mistake, you go tune it. You make a mistake, you go tune it. You make a mistake, you go tune it. And we get through the whole game or the whole core loop, we have enough, then we'll go do a pilot of 40 people. And the trick for us, what we learned was, what makes us so powerful is, before we do the right method, we'll first do some baseline methods to make sure the science is working. We convert what I'm calling the analog science to the digital game. So just for example, if you would take a CBT method, which we don't, if you take a CBT mechanism and you turn it into a game, do you get the better results in the game, or do you get worse results? If you get worse results, you've got a problem already. Then let's say you get the same results or better, great. Then our job as design people is, when we do the right method, are we seeing the game mechanics and the visual presentation, the interactivity, the engagement rhythms, is it making it better or worse? If the game design and the interaction layer and the visual treatment doesn't make it better, go back to 0. And so this is how we come to work, and it's working great for us. This is, for those of you who are interested, so CBT is the gold standard for behavioral science for anxiety and depression. If you don't know, nothing in mental health works better than 50% in any disease state. CBT is the gold standard because it hits 50%. When we were doing our research, we found out that not only do we better than CBT, but we take the game from the kids. The kids were playing in classrooms. We've done this in 6 studies, including one study with autistic kids. We've replicated, and we now have a total of over 1,000 kids through tests. These were pre-registered, randomized controlled trials. So we had nothing to hide, and we're not sponsored by anybody. And what we found was we're actually doing better than CBT. 6 months when the kids no longer have access to the game, they're doing better in self-reporting, which is how we do behavioral health, than they do with CBT. So we know it works and we can prove it works. And that's the magic. And if you want to see the publications, you can go to our website. There's links to all the publications. These are some of the older ones, and Isabel and the team just did another meta study. But it's pretty shocking that you can prove that games are better. That's pretty cool, but you got to do the work, right? So here's just a quick snippet of the version that we're about to release. And the blue light is from the biofeedback device, but she's just sitting there playing the game. And so the way my light works is we get you with monsters and bad guys and darkness, obviously symbolic of anxiety. And when you counter the monsters, you have to downregulate. So the calmer you get, the brighter your light gets, the brighter the light gets in your character in the game, and that's how you kill the monsters. And so what really teaches you is downregulation through exposure therapy and attention bias modification. But it works, and it's fun, and we're trying to meet them where they are. We're not trying to get them into a serious game where it's a really simple platformer or action-adventure game. The mechanics are pretty simple. The game's mostly on rails, but we give them as much agency as we can because we want it to be a game. We let them tell their story, but it's on rails, and that's okay. And so that's what we're doing. Last thing I'll tell you is if you're interested, so Isabel also has something called the Games for Emotional Mental Health Lab. She's published all these findings and methods in her toolkit. So on the top is if you want to support MindLight, you're interested in MindLight, let me know. By the way, I still need about 8 kids ages 8 to 12 who want to be beta testers. Because we're doing our final answer. If you're interested, email me if you have somebody who wants to be a beta tester. Okay, they don't have to have anxiety, but it's even better if they do. And if not, let's be honest, as a parent, it's your job to give them anxiety. But just not too much. You want to regulate that right level so you can have a long-term discussion about neuroses. But if you're making games and things and you want to learn some of the methods we've done, Isabel's put all that up through the GEM Lab. So thank you.
Sure.
Can you reset to the beginning or do I have to scroll all the way back?
It's a different, that makes sense. Yes. Sit good. There you go. Up.
So let me go back one thing beyond us. There we go. All right. So I'm going to go back to the 30,000-foot level with all of this input in mind and talk a little bit about where we come into this in the SAA Society, and I'll give you just a short history of it. We were formed by a group of people from the Producers Guild of America who had a task force dealing with social impact entertainment. And we decided we wanted to have a much broader spectrum of storytelling media than that institution allowed. So we created the SAE Society during the start of the pandemic. It's a free organization. You can join. There are no dues or fees. Our goal is to embrace everybody, literally globally, who are storytelling. The storytelling community from around the world. There'll be some information about how to do that at the end. But I wanted to give you a little bit of context. If you look at our Wikipedia page that we put together, we're really kind of the confluence of several different sorts of disciplines. It's social impact entertainment itself, but we're also the social behavioral change communication, and we're also corporate social responsibility, because we see all of these things, as the Venn diagram indicates, as intersecting with one another, and that you really need to tie them together. They don't sit in small compartments isolated from one another. So one of my heroes, in terms of storytelling, motivation, whatever, is Chuck Lorre, because I think what Evan was talking about before, that a lot of storytellers and the participant media is one of the leaders in this. They coined the phrase of putting spinach into the popcorn, and that's a lot of what the storytelling is about in terms of social impact entertainment. So Chuck Lorre is sort of famous for doing that with his shows like Mom and whatever that he's put on the shows, and he's got personal hero. So There's a wonderful quote from Plato about those who tell the stories rule society, and I think whether we're talking about the oral tradition of telling stories that pass on from generation to generation, or fast forward into the era of TikTok and user-generated content as well. One of my colleagues, one co-executive director of the SIE Society, Robert Ripperger, wrote a book called The Power of Storytelling that sort of delves into some of this area. Basically, what we're about is trying to connect people. We're basically taking all of this sort of thing and saying, okay, there are a lot of bubbled communities, silos, whether they're academic, nonprofit, corporate, whatever, as well as media who don't talk to one another, who are not related to one another. So my personal confession was that my main engagement with the video game directly goes back to the era of Legend of Zelda and Leisure Suit Larry and Super Mario, whatever, with my children. So I am not probably the best person in terms of gaming per se, but what I can tell you is I have 40 years of experience in film and television production, as well as having worked for the NBA in professional sports as well. And all of these are very much involved in social impact entertainment and what we're doing. So what this panel is about, and this is the setup for it, is essentially what is meaningful measurement, why are we focused on measurement, and what are the measurement tools and whatever. So this is your takeaway at the end of, I suppose, in the beginning. One thing I should note also is in the SIE Society, because it relates to the Sustainable Development Goals, which were framed for this conference, is that we are members of the SDG Media Compact, as well as the Global Media Compact, and very much as I mentioned, see this as a global sort of endeavor with which we are involved. Yep, there we go. So our guide, our mantra, if you look at our website, and we have resources that are on there on different topics, including mental health, including social justice and other kinds of issues, is to sort of tag those to relate storytelling and create these a resource database of industry studies, DEA and other areas where we were basically gathering a lot of information where if people are new to the field or whatever, these are resources that we have tagged relating to the SDGs. So these are some of the panels we've done. If you all joined, again, as a member, you can immediately access under our events section. These are all videos that we have done for webinars and panels and presentations that deal with this area of measuring and assessing impact. Again, just further resources that we have online available for free to you to help you sort of look at designing things. Again, a lot of what we focus upon has on the front end been very oriented towards the film and television industry, but we also are potentially a bridge for you all to that industry in Hollywood, because there's a lot of intersection in terms of what's being created today between these different media platforms. And then finally, this is sort of a personal mantra from Marilyn Williams, and sort of something that drives me in terms of why I do this kind of work and why I'm involved with it, is that I see this as a form of service and trying to make the world a better place. So there's the contact information if you want to sign on and know more about us. But that's the sort of background and what was going to be the setup for the session today. So we have a little under 15 minutes, and I thought we could use that time for people. I'm sure we have questions for people on the panel, so maybe open it up to people who have questions you want to ask of people and our experts.
For Evan, I was wondering if,
Hi. I was wondering if the results of your study were in-game, like the kids' anxiety was reduced while they were playing, or if you measured their anxiety.
We measure after. So we do. We'll do what's happening. We're measuring in-game. So the way the game works is initially it was all on alpha and theta wave off a single sensor, EEG sensor, and what we're measuring is their kids' stress levels, and truthfully, we're inferring it through other calculations. We've since now broadened with support for Garmin watches, so we're doing heart rate variability. So what's interesting is in game, we physically know what's happening. We don't psychologically know what's happening to me because we're not doing fMRIs, right? But it's been interesting that we can certainly see the compulsion loops happening. It's only now that we're starting to get actually in-game data with post data from the biofeedback. So we're curious to see where that may lead, but the clinical data is all post. So the way most behavioral health works is there'll be a pre-screening measurement. And then so we do a 30-day pre-screen at day 0, and then they'll measure it, I think at 14 and 30 days, but the kids have access to the game for 30 days. And then we do all the assessments afterwards as well to prove the transference.
So the cross
That's for 6 months.
the low rate of
For 6 months. That's what's so impressive about it, is that 6 months after they haven't even had access to the game, we see a continued, they've taken on the skills, right? So we can tell you what we want to tell you, but the truth is we're trying to teach them to downregulate as a skill, right? And so attention bias modifications, instead of looking for threats, that when they see threats, they calm themselves down and then go to better places through exposure therapy. And that muscle through the repetition of the games is working, right? So, yeah.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Hi. So I really like the example of your game because it's an internal change that you've provoked in your players, and I'm wondering if either of you guys have examples of provoking external change, like driving action, because it's very different to internal versus external. So I wonder if either of you have examples of measuring that type of impact.
Yeah, we are working right now where our system plugs into content. So what happens is whether it's in a game or whether it's in a video or a film, the viewer will tap our plus and get her menu of all of the solutions-based activities framed around the UN SDGs that she can do. So, for example, there's a film that's out right now called Generation Growth, and it's about inner city kids and the importance of health and wellness. So what we're seeing, the behavior change through that film is more people planting their own gardens at home, more people getting nutrition guides, more people actually scheduling an appointment with a nutritionist, listening to more podcasts, watching more video about health and wellness. So we're capturing those concrete behavior changes outside of the film. There are several other examples on our website.
Yeah, and I'll just to connect the two, I mean, any behavior change is driven by a change in someone's knowledge or attitude. So if we think about, like, there's a lot of research on this, there's a sort of medium correlation between a self-reported change in intention and actually taking an action. So when we expose people to actions that they can take, some people will take them and some people won't, right? So the engagement, the media and the things that they're doing, for example, in a game, should be part of what motivates them to then take the action. And the more effective the game is at doing that, the more you're going to see those actual actions happen. So, there's a million examples, thinking about that ladder of engagement and how people end up taking the actions we want them to take, from, participating in elections, participating in local civic opportunities, changing how they use their time. Those are behavior changes that are external, but they're driven by changes in that person's knowledge or beliefs that we can help to produce through these media or gaming experiences.
I was going to chime in. One thing I want to encourage you to think of when you do these things, regardless of what's in-game or out of game, you have to ramp your users. I watch people go too fast with too big a change or too big a commitment, and you don't earn the trust. And so my general feeling is make sure you give them 1 or 2 tasks which are effortless engagement and impossible to fail at. Don't give them a reason to keep going. Earn that trust, earn the time before you try to do the behavior change. Because if you go too fast, again, you're going to just face plant.
I would add that if you are looking for behavior change outside of the game, there are 3 important things to keep in mind. One is that you have to get to the user immediately at the moment of inspiration. You cannot expect the user to go off and Google, what am I going to do about oceans plastics? Second is that whatever solution you offer them has to be relevant and contextual to their world, their health, their life, their wealth. End of story. If you're offering solutions that are too esoteric, they're not going to engage.
Is it contextual or relevant or both?
Both.
Because I think relevant to your point, it's
Absolutely.
relevancy, right?
Well, so the intersection of those is salience, right? So.
I'm some smart people now.
So it has to be salient, right? So, and, right?
Well done. That's actually a word for that, so. That's serious work here.
Hi, good afternoon. My question is, in terms of the games, once you have people hooked to your game and the behavioral change has occurred, how does your game, or do you do gaming that then is continuing to keep them engaged, and as they're progressing, there's things to continue to support them in that? If there's a relapse, they're still getting that continual, I guess, feedback loop or engagement with the game, so they don't completely fall off track of the behavioral change that you guys have incited in them.
It's an economy. So if you haven't heard the term, it's economy balancing, and that's
Sorry?
about economy balancing,
Oh, okay.
right? How do you, like, what do we often, the design folks I work, we think about classes of reward structures. Some are very low level. Sometimes recognition of who you are is a reward, right? Recognition. I remember where you were yesterday. There's low level recognition, and there's medium level recognition, and there's high level. And then and the way you tune and balance those is hard work and just iterate. But you have to think about it. So when I teach my students, we ask, okay, you've got this great idea, great. So tell me what is the first 7, 15, 22, and 30 seconds of rewards looking like? And then tell me what's going to happen in months 3, 6, 9, and 12. How do those rewards scale over time? And how you consistently to earn trust and earn that loop? Because if you don't keep reinforcing that feedback loop, that it's an addiction loop done for good, right? If you do it right, that's what it is, right? But if you don't take that loop, an adherence loop, which is the pharmaceutical term for it, then no change comes. But where you see a lot of people fail is they have this great idea, they've got a great gag, and it's fun for about 6 clicks. There's no economy. It's just nothing but a gag. So you have to really think about how does I scale over time and scale over user investment and user emotional investment, not financial investment. Emotional investment, how am I going to keep them going, right?
And I'll just add, that goes for civic engagement and participation in society as well. It's about psychology, right? It's about those reward processes and also social reinforcement. So if you, for example, are motivated to go volunteer, then you meet people, then you get the benefits of that experience, and you hopefully find it rewarding, and you're more likely to do it again. So anything that we're exposing people to, similar to what I was saying about sort of scale, depth, and duration, like duration is really the crux, right? It's like, how do they internalize it and continue to do it?
What's the rhythm of that?
And what's the rhythm of that? Exactly.
I'll tell you one last thought, and then there's a question back. What you see a lot of people do is we're talking about measuring success. If you want to get good at this, measure failure. Find the people who give up your game or who didn't like your thing and go talk to them. Because they're going to tell you why you sucked. Okay? Having your family tell you how delightful it was ain't helping you. Yep. Right? Get the people who don't like it and walked away and fix that problem, and then the results come.
And that applies to impact and to business growth.
Hence the need for measurement.
Exactly. So everybody looks at who they have, they don't look at who they lost, right? And most conversion rates are maybe 1%.
Yeah, 1% if you're doing great, 3% if you're not.
Yeah, exactly. So if
there's 97% of people should go talk to.
Right. So, when I think about this a lot, if people, let's say you have a social impact property or website or a game or whatever, if people come to you, they came to you because they care about what your thing is, whether that's they want it because it's fun or they want it because of the impact.
Or I hope you found where they were.
Right. So they come to you, that's a high value person. Whether you're talking about a commercial sales pipeline or you're talking about an impact sort of pipeline to try to get people to donate or
they're predisposed to that.
Right, they got to you somehow, and that person has value because they got to you. That means they're in some way interested, motivated, and if we can convert more of those people and bring them up that ladder of engagement from that first kind of low-level point and continue to build their engagement and commitment, that's how we make change, ultimately. Because if you hit everybody once, you're not going to get to your goal.
Oh, thank you.
So my question is a little bit fuzzy maybe, but I'm really curious about from your experience, this idea of linking soft skills with social impact, because soft skills are fuzzier to evaluate, but are then equally critical in impacting change. So I was just wondering what are your thoughts about that?
So this is a place where we focus a lot on, because again, and I don't want to be repetitious, but when you're finding that predisposed audience and giving them relevant, contextual, salient opportunities to make change, then we are able to track those soft behaviors. And at scale, those soft skills translate into bigger changes, whether it, ultimately it could be policy, it could be many different things. But you have to start somewhere, and remembering that most of the population in the world is not as entrenched in impact as all of us are, and getting that low-hanging fruit, to Levi's point of starting them on that ladder of engagement, I mean, that's a huge breakthrough to open that door.
And let me jump in and just mention that in addition to what you're doing directly with the game, if you look at the services section of the SAE Society site, you'll see that a lot of what we've focused upon is there are rubrics and different things for measurement sticks and techniques that are being used. And one of the things that we do, and this largely may apply mainly to film and television, but it certainly could be advanced into the gaming world, which is there are curriculum guides and other materials that are made available to extend the life and the reach, particularly of independent films and things that may not play to the main large mainstream market, but still have great value. And by creating those materials and support that getting to teachers and students and the parents and others or whatever, there's another way of reaching it out there to expand upon the approaches that are taken to this area.
I'm just going to plus me. So when I'm working on a project and I do a bunch of things outside Play Nice, who are you going after? I think too often, because we're coming from a cause, we think it's a good cause. I'm not saying it's not, but that the cause is enough. And in any other world of business, you start with understanding who your user is and what makes them motivated, where are they, why they do things, whatever, I think the more you think you can segment out your cause of who you're trying to reach and pick one or two that you're most likely to succeed and start and get very precise with them and start building an audience out as opposed to going broad and getting nowhere. It's cheating in the way consumer products companies cheat. But if it gets you a toehold and gets you income, it's a lot easier to go broader or gets you impact. It's a lot easier to go from a win than to go from a lot of small losses. So I would encourage you to think about segmenting who your targets are and picking the ones that you're most likely to succeed with, starting with, and think about them in relation to your cause and your impact. And because if you can't find that bridge, you can only make it so pretty. It's not going to make a difference, right? So think about who's that end user for the message, the game, the media, and why do they care about it?
And maybe we just go down the line for last thoughts before we close out. We're at time now. Levi, any last?
Yeah, just thanks for all of your attention and questions. There's a lot of digging in and strategy, and I'm happy to hear from anybody if you want to reach out to me on LinkedIn or anything like that to talk about your situation or get some thoughts about how you can start to do some impact design or data work. Just let me know.
Julie?
I would just think that it's one thing to make change in-game. Don't forget about making change in the real world, because we need to move the needle here. And obviously, LinkedIn, whatever, feel free to reach me if you want to talk about it further. Thanks.
And I want to thank the tech team also for your adeptness at.
Sorry you didn't get to see my slides, but oh well.
But and also our panelists for making themselves.
So thank you guys for organizing it.
Thank you all for attending, and we'll probably hang around for a couple of minutes here.